Welcome everyone. In this video we're going to talk about the turtles of North Dakota. We're going to learn how to distinguish the species from each other and learn a little bit about their biology and ecology. As always, all the animals were handled with proper permits, handled using appropriate safety protocols, and then released back into the wild. We ask that you respect all wildlife and be sure that you understand your local and state regulations in regards to flora and fauna. If you have any questions, you need identification help with anything, or if you're an educator and want to incorporate North Dakota reptiles and amphibians into your curriculum, please feel free to reach out to North Dakota Game and Fish, myself at one of these two email addresses, or find me on Twitter at HerpEcomorph. We also ask that as you are out enjoying the great state of North Dakota, that you think about submitting your observations of reptiles and amphibians to herpmapper.org. You can download the app to your smartphone or tablet and easily submit observations using this phone or tablet's camera and GPS. You can also upload observations to ndherpatlas.org. All of that information is kept private so that the locations cannot be abused. And that information helps North Dakota Game and Fish and myself understand the distributions and population trends of our local species. We'll start with the western painted turtle, Carapace pictabelli. So again, some people just say painted turtle and Carapace picta. I've been working with this species for 25 years now, and I'm sort of just stuck using the subspecies. But whether it's western painted turtle or painted turtle, it's the same thing. There's multiple subspecies of painted turtles across the U.S. that differ just by a few traits here. So painted turtles get their name from their plastron or their belly. They have a brightly painted plastron. It's red or orange with some patterning on it, some green and yellow patterning. You'll see in the next image, but basically if I'm a predatory fish or an aquatic predator and I look up at the belly of a turtle, I'm going to see what appears to be the underside of a lily pad. And so they have evolved a plastron coloration to mimic that of the aquatic vegetation. Their skin or scales on their head, neck, and limbs are green to black. They've got yellow stripes. They're a medium-sized turtle. Certainly not a small turtle, but they're not the largest in North Dakota. They can get 14 to 16 inches long. The females tend to be on average larger than the males. Juveniles are primarily carnivores, or adults then sort of shift their diet and incorporate more plant material. Painted turtles are an aquatic turtle. They spend most of their time in or near an aquatic habitat, a wetland or a lake. But they leave that habitat to lay their eggs on land. In the northern parts of their population, the juveniles, so the eggs hatch, the juveniles actually spend winter in that nest, allowing themselves to partially freeze, and they emerge in the spring and make their way to the wetland or lake nearby. That doesn't happen in the same species if further south in their population, but in northern North Dakota and Minnesota, it's likely that the young are still overwintering inside the nests. So here, if we look at the plastron or belly of the painted turtle, again, this nice orange with the black and yellow patterning to look like a lily pad. The carapace or top of the shell is generally sort of a dark green to sort of an olive green with yellowish markings on it, or sometimes black markings. Again, black to green scales with yellow patterns. They have nails or claws on all forelimbs and hindlimbs. Males tend to have much larger or longer nails on their forelimbs. They actually use those in breeding. They tickle the females to entice her to breed. Females tend to be larger, but we can also look at the cloaca of a turtle. So the cloaca is here on the tail. That's the urogenital opening. Male cloacas tend to be farther away from the shell. Female cloacas tend to be closer to the shell. Look at a few more images. Again, this sort of keratinized beak. They don't really have teeth, although you can see on this beak there are sort of two pronounced fangs, but they're not true teeth. Again, eating a mix of plant and animal material. The younger they are, the more protein or animal based it is. As they get older, they incorporate more plant material. Okay. Again, lots of variation in the pattern on the carapace and the plastron. And again, we find these throughout the state. It's likely that you've seen some painted turtles. They spend large portions of the day basking on logs or emergent vegetation, often in large groups. They're very quick to dive back into the water. Just a great turtle in general. Next is the false map turtle, Graptemes pseudogeographica. These are slightly larger than the painted turtle, although again, females tend to be larger than males, so the male map turtles will fall well within the range of the painted turtle. They're not as vividly patterned or colored, right? The carapace or top shell has a pronounced sort of knob or ridge, especially in juveniles. And they really have quite a small restricted range in North Dakota. They're restricted to the Missouri River and immediate tributaries. Here we can see a juvenile. Again, we see this pronounced knobs on the shell and sort of spikier edges on the carapace. Again, sort of although this is sort of a drab yellow markings, they don't have as bright markings as the painted turtle, and then the plastron has yellow on it, not orange, and is not nearly as patterned. Again, here we can see an individual. Again, really restricted range here in North Dakota, really just found in the Missouri River and a few of the adjacent tributaries. Again, we haven't done a ton of work on this species, so again, any of your observations would help. The next species is the smooth softshell turtle, Abalone mutica. This is the third largest species in the state. The carapace, or top of the shell, is soft or pliable. So they're referred to as softshell turtle because it doesn't have those bony plates like the other turtles have. But it still has a carapace and a plastron. They sort of have this really long pig-like nose that they use as a snorkel, very long necks. Softshell turtles we actually have two species of, but they prefer clear waters with current, so moving water, and sandy bottoms. So they prefer to be in river habitats rather than lakes or wetlands, much like the map turtles are typically found in the river as well. We don't tend to find those in wetlands. We don't see them out as much basking, but they do leave the water to nest. They do leave the water to migrate. They will come out and bask occasionally. We just don't see them out as much as we do the painted turtles or the false map turtles. Softshell turtles are carnivores their whole life, so they eat little to no plant material. They really have an animal-based diet for the majority of their life. We do have the spiny softshell turtle as well, and so these two can be difficult to tell apart, but there's two real things we need to look at. First, the front edge of the carapace is smooth, so right here we can see how nice and rounded that carapace is, the front edge. The second thing we look at is the nostrils, whereas the smooth softshell has round nostrils without a ridge, so you see how sort of flat that nose is. The spiny softshell has like a D-shaped nostril with a ridge, and we'll see that in just a second. So if we take another look here, again, if the softshell is a dead giveaway, you'll see how much different it is when we look at a full body shot next. Softshell turtles are very easy to differentiate from the other turtle species, but since we have two species, they're difficult to tell apart from each other. So the first thing we look at is the edge of the carapace. If it's smooth or it doesn't have spikes or bumps, then that tells us it's a smooth softshell. The other thing is, again, the nostrils are nice and round, and the nose doesn't end in sort of a ridge or an edge. So those two traits would tell us this is a smooth softshell versus a spiny softshell. So again, here's a large adult, probably a large female. And these turtles are deceptively fast, especially in water. Again, restricted just to the Missouri River Valley and some of the tributaries. The other species that we have is the spiny softshell, Abalone spinifera. Again, this one's larger than the smooth softshell, so this is the second largest species here. Females, once again, larger than males. Again, big thing here is the nostrils are D-shaped and that the carapace has spines or bumps on the front edge of it. Okay? Very similar to the smooth soft shell as far as biology and ecology, just a few trait differences. Again, really restricted to the Missouri River Valley and some of the nearby tributaries. Very limited distribution in the false map, smooth soft shell, and spiny soft shell turtle. Okay. So again, if we look, see the front edge of the carapace here, see all those bumps? And see the bumps here? That tells us that that's a spiny soft shell. And then the nostrils here, see how flared they are and they're flat in the middle? That's D-shaped nostrils with a ridge. That tells us this is a spiny soft shell, not a smooth soft shell. Okay? Again, found in a little bit broader range than the smooth, but really just restricted to the Missouri River Valley. Okay? So that's 3 species of turtles we have in a small area. So you can see the importance of understanding where they are and how many people are seeing to really get an idea of how we can protect those populations. The last species is the largest, the common snapping turtle, Gelidra serpentina. So the largest turtle species in North Dakota. I really love snapping turtles. They can get over 30 inches long and over 50 pounds. Powerful limbs, long claws, powerful jaws, this long spiky tail. They really look prehistoric, right? But again, play very important roles in the ecosystems, and it's critical to maintain healthy populations here. The carapace is often covered with algae because they spend large periods of time sitting sedentary at the bottom of some of these mucky wetlands. They really do prefer sort of these mucky bottomed aquatic environments. They don't like rocky bottoms. They like to get into this substrate. They will inhabit sandy bottoms. So we see them in some sandy lakes, even especially on the Minnesota side. But again, on North Dakota side, it really isn't uncommon for them to inhabit large wetlands with sort of that mucky bottom. Again, they're carnivores their entire life, and they've been known to take very large items of prey, right? So ducklings and things off the surface, right? They've got the powerful jaws that they can subdue and then drag it down to the bottom. Okay? They live a very secretive life, and so, all reptiles and amphibians really live a secretive life, but snapping turtles, again, don't move as much as some of the other species, and so we don't see them as often, so we know even sort of less about their day-to-day life. But again, just a really great looking turtle. Again, I know that they tend to intimidate people. They get defensive. You know, often when you find them, they're crossing the road, so you pull over and you try to rush them off, and they're going to stand their ground. Okay, but really just a great turtle. Okay. I have nothing against trying to help a turtle cross the road, but please don't ever grab a snapping turtle by the tail. That's not the proper way to hold it, right? The proper way to secure a snapping turtle would put one hand on the carapace right behind the head and one hand back by the tail. They actually can't, for as weird as you think it is putting your fingers right by the head, they can't get right where the carapace is. But if you pick up a 50-pound snapping turtle by its tail, you're going to break some vertebrae and do some real damage. And so, again, please be careful when interacting with wildlife and only do so when it is allowed and necessary. Again, great turtles really just look prehistoric, but they do get very defensive and they have a lot of jaw power. So please just let them be unless they are in imminent danger. We have found them throughout North Dakota, although we still don't know a whole lot about the populations in North Dakota. So while we found them sort of across the state, you notice that it's sort of hit or miss. And so we're not really sure if this is a very common species or not. Okay. Here's a juvenile, or 2 pictures of the same juvenile, right? So again, just like all the other turtles, the females leave the water to dig a nest and lay her eggs underground. Snapping turtles, unlike painted turtles, do not overwinter in the nest, and so they'll emerge in the fall and try to make their way. So in the fall and early spring, you should be able to find hatchlings around. Again, please just leave wildlife alone. But again, they're really just miniature versions of the adults, but you can see this is a newly hatched snapping turtle, easily fits in the palm of my hand. This is probably a 35-pound female that we found working to build a nest. So they live a long time, but they take a long time to mature. So they might not even reproduce until they're 20 years old. Okay, so populations take a long time to recover because they have a long time to maturation. Okay, those are the turtles of North Dakota. Hopefully that helps you identify them from each other. Again, please consider making a HertMapper account and upload your observations as part of community science endeavor to help North Dakota Game and Fish and myself better understand the local populations.